and is poised to get well over 300 seats in the lower house in the Indian Parliament. Let's get more on this now. Our India correspondent Bruce Harrison joins us now live from New Delhi. Hey Bruce, thank you very much indeed for joining us. India had weeks of voting. We have a week here in South Africa. There's about 5 to 6 weeks of voting. So we're now counting down to the election results. How long does counting take?
Well, Blaine, it takes most of a day, typically, yes. After the 5 long weeks, more like 5.5 weeks of voting, there's a brief 3-day gap while the Election Commission is able to gather itself after this massive democratic exercise, and then we have what's called counting day. And voting starts at 8 a.m., and it usually wraps up in the afternoon or evening. This year is a little bit different because in addition to just the electronic voting machines they're using to count the votes, they're also matching those with a limited number of paper ballots that are simultaneously cast, and that's to ensure a fair election. It's a new step the Election Commission is taking this year, so it'll make the process a bit longer till we have an official count. But as you mentioned, it looks like the NDA, the National Democratic Alliance, which is led by the B.J.P, the party of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is on its way to a comfortable win. It's still too early to call the election. They are still counting the ballots, but based on what we're seeing now, yes, likely another 5 years of Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
What issues, Bruce, dominated the national debate over the past couple of months there?
Well, the primary issue, Blaine, would be the economy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi ran on a economy-based campaign in 2014 to eventually win that election and take his first term in office. And we've seen a lot of growth under the Prime Minister, and early on in his tenure we did see many of his policies play out, though he has been criticized for some of those slowing down. One of the major issues is jobs for young people, and then in India, where more than 50% of the workforce is made up by farmers, there's a massive crisis right now. Drought, price drops have done terrible things to the farming industry here. It has led to a surge in farmer suicides nationwide. So that was a major issue as well. Which side, whether it's the incumbent B.J.P and Modi or the opposition-led Congress party in Rahul Gandhi, who will tap that crucial farm bloc of voters and perhaps propel themselves to victory. Ultimately, it looks like it's going to be the B.J.P as well. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have a lot on his plate if he does in fact win, and when it comes to continuing what's seen as India's very strong economic growth.
Yeah, in the build-up, Bruce, to these elections, what were analysts saying? What's the talk on the ground? Is Mr. Modi India's best option for economic reform?
Well, that's an interesting question, and if you look at just today, after vote counting started, we saw a boost to the local markets, a good sign for investors who have put a lot of money into India over the past 5 years under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He promised early on that he would make India a more inclusive society when it comes to corporate investment as well as exports, and he did do that to a certain extent. On that front, I think it's seen, especially by the world outside of India, that he is the proper choice to continue in that regard. Ultimately, though, his campaign did shift, and it focused more on a national security platform. We saw less talk about the economy. He felt that was perhaps the best way to rein in voters. So that may concern investors a little bit, because the party's manifesto simply doesn't have that much detail about the economy going forward. So it'll be interesting to see what he can actually do.
Bruce, tell us about the other contenders, Rahul Gandhi being one of them. How does Mr. Modi and Mr. Gandhi stack up against each other?
Well, Mr. Gandhi comes from a pedigreed political background. His family has led the Congress party since 1947, the time of India's independence, and for a long time they dominated politics. But this is the second campaign in a row that Congress has been, well, it's too soon to call the election, but the second time, if they do lose, that they will be defeated handily by the B.J.P. the Congress Party chose, especially later into the campaign, to address all the issues that it seems like Modi's government had failed to take care of despite promising, whether it was the economy, also this issue of nationalism. Many critics have said Prime Minister Narendra Modi has focused on the Hindi population here and ostracized minorities. The Congress Party vowed to make this more of a secular society and address some of those issues as well. Ultimately, though, the Congress Party not seeming to reach voters just the way that Mr. Modi did in 2014 and once again this year, it seems.
Some would say that this is being seen in some quarters as a referendum of Mr. Modi's tenure.
Definitely. That's what a lot of people were saying, especially in the build-up to counting day. There was concerns among the NDA alliance whether they would be able to win some of the traditional strongholds. And the opposition put up quite a front, an alliance that we hadn't seen before to try and dethrone a lot of the B.J.P. members in Parliament across the country. That doesn't seem to be the case today. We've actually seen the B.J.P. make more inroads, perhaps, than it did before. So that leads us to believe, at least when it comes to the voter level, the average voter wasn't necessarily seeing it as a referendum on the B.J.P., despite what analysts were suggesting could be a hole punched through these traditional B.J.P. strongholds by some of the opposition. They may have gotten it wrong when you look at the actual voters and what the B.J.P. and its alliance has accomplished today.
Yeah. Well, Bruce, what's the magic number here in terms of seats in Parliament? What are parties aiming for?
272 gives you a majority to form the government in India's parliament. And right now, based on the returns we're seeing, that's going to be no problem for the B.J.P. It may be able to form the government with the sole majority, like it did in 2014 without the help of alliance. And I can tell you, analysts certainly did not see that coming. Most projected that if Modi wanted to remain prime minister, if his party wanted to form the government, they would need alliance help. That has not been the case. The opposition being drubbed by the returns we've seen so far. And 272 is that magic number. They're hovering around 300 right now, I believe, just the B.J.P. And its alliance. And in no uncertain terms, it looks like they will be able to form the government.
Bruce, I'm interested to know if Mr. Modi takes up the office of Prime Minister again, what will that mean for India-Pakistan relations? Because we do know about the tensions there. Could there be a closer relationship with Mr. Modi and Mr. Imran Khan?
Well, it's possible, but Prime Minister Modi has specifically used border tension, it appears, to his advantage in this election. He's really played up the national security card to probably reach a wider number of voters. We can look back to February when there was an attack on Indian security forces near the border with Pakistan. 40 men were killed. Modi responded later to another border skirmish with an Air Force strike, and he has invoked the strength of the military and his decision to take force throughout this campaign. I can't expect that would bode well for India-Pakistan relations in the long run. But it's unclear at this time whether or not that was simply a campaign strategy to maintain his power, to maintain his party's power, and he will try and broker more of a peaceful arrangement down the road.
Bruce, we appreciate you reporting. Thank you very much indeed. Come back to us and give us an update with regards to these election results. That was our India correspondent, Bruce Harrison. We're going to take a quick break, get you more news next.